I am Clara, 29 years old, and despite running a multi-million-dollar tech company, I still take the bus to work. My parents never understood my choice to live simply, especially when I showed up to our annual family dinner in jeans while my cousins arrived in designer outfits. When Ethan mockingly asked if I was still taking public transportation, I never expected my antique watch to catch my dad's eye. The look on his face changed everything that night. If you are watching this, drop a comment telling me where you are from. Hit that like button and subscribe to hear how I silenced a room full of status-obsessed relatives with just a flick of my wrist. Growing up as the daughter of Michael and Catherine Donovan meant attending elite private schools, vacationing in the Hampton, and having every material advantage a child could want. My father built his real estate empire from scratch, turning a small inheritance into a fortune through determination and business savvy. My mother came from old money, her family name appearing on buildings across Manhattan. They provided me with every opportunity, but they also instilled in me the importance of making my own way in the world. Unlike my cousins, who were content to live off family money and connections, I was determined to build something meaningful on my own terms. After graduating from Harvard Business School, I surprised everyone by declining a six-figure job offer at my father's company. Instead, I accepted an entry-level position at a struggling tech startup. My father was confused, but supportive. My mother was devastated, convinced I was throwing away my potential. My cousins, especially Ethan, thought I had lost my mind. "You could be driving a Porsche by next year if you worked for Uncle Michael," Ethan said when I told him about my decision. "Instead, you will be making coffee for some nerds who will probably go bankrupt in 6 months." I just smiled and told him there were more important things in life than driving a Porsche. He looked at me like I had spoken in an alien language. The startup was everything I had hoped for: fast-paced, innovative, filled with brilliant minds working together to create something revolutionary. I thrived in that environment, quickly rising through the ranks to become product manager within 18 months. That was where I met Arthur Vance, a 66-year-old veteran entrepreneur who served as our company advisor. Arthur became the mentor I needed. While my father had taught me about business in theory, Arthur showed me its practical application in the tech world. He was brilliant, kind, and completely unimpressed by status symbols despite his enormous wealth. He drove a 10-year-old Toyota, wore the same 3 sweaters in rotation, and lived in a modest home. Yet, he had founded 3 unicorn startups and was respected throughout Silicon Valley. "True wealth is invisible, Clara," he told me once. "The moment you need to show people how successful you are, you have already failed at understanding what success means." I absorbed his philosophy like a sponge. When our startup was acquired by a tech giant 2 years later, I used my buyout money to found my own company, Vance Dynamics, naming it in honor of Arthur. He was touched by the gesture and became my first investor and board member. The first 2 years were brutal. I worked 18-hour days, lived in a tiny studio apartment, and poured every cent back into the company. I developed a platform that helped small businesses compete with corporate giants through data analysis and targeted marketing strategies. The potential was enormous, but the early days were filled with setbacks, failed pitches, and dwindling resources. Through it all, Arthur stood by me. When other investors got nervous, he remained calm. When I doubted myself, he reminded me of my vision, and when I was ready to give up, he showed up at my apartment with takeout and stories about his own early failures. On my 28th birthday, after a particularly difficult quarter that nonetheless showed promising metrics, Arthur presented me with a small box. "This has been with me through 3 companies, 2 market crashes, and 1 very public failure," he said. "Now it should be with you." Inside was his watch. Not flashy or obviously expensive, it was elegant in its simplicity. An Arthur Vance original from the limited collection he designed as a side project before he became known for tech. I recognized it immediately from articles I had read about him, but I had no idea of its true value. Arthur, I cannot accept this, I protested. This is worth more than my company, he laughed. Right now, perhaps, but not for long. He fastened it around my wrist. Promise me you will wear it when you need to remember your worth, not what others think you are worth. 3 months later, Arthur passed away unexpectedly from a heart attack. I was devastated. The watch became my most treasured possession, not for its monetary value, but because it connected me to him. I wore it every day as I navigated the company through its growth phase without his guidance. In the years since his death, Vance Dynamics had exploded. We secured major clients, expanded to 3 international offices, and were featured in every major tech publication. I was named to the Forbes 30 Under 30 list, and acquisition offers began pouring in. Through it all, I maintained Arthur's philosophy of understated success. I still lived in my modest apartment, though I had upgraded to a 1-bedroom. I still took public transportation, and I still avoided the spotlight whenever possible. My extended family remained largely unaware of my success. They knew I had started my own company, but I never discussed its growth at family gatherings, preferring to listen to my cousins boast about their latest purchases instead. My parents respected my privacy, though my father occasionally checked in on my company's public filings and seemed increasingly impressed by what he saw. The annual Donovan family dinner was a tradition held at my parents' estate in Connecticut. Every year, the entire extended family gathered to eat, drink, and inevitably compare achievements and acquisitions. My Uncle David was my father's younger brother, and there had always been a competitive tension between them. While my father built his fortune through hard work, Uncle David married into wealth and managed his connections into a senior position at a prestigious financial firm. Their children, my cousins, led by Ethan, measured success by the brands they wore and the cars they drove. As I prepared for this year's dinner, I thought about Arthur. I could almost hear his gentle laugh and his advice. Let them have their Porsche. You are building something that will last. With that thought in mind, I dressed in my usual style: dark jeans, a simple white blouse, minimal makeup, and Arthur's watch. I ordered an Uber and headed to Connecticut. The Uber driver whistled softly as we pulled through the ornate iron gates of my parents' estate. Nice place, he said, navigating the long, winding driveway. I nodded, watching the familiar Georgian mansion come into view. I always felt a strange mix of emotions returning here: pride in what my parents had built, nostalgia for my childhood, and a slight discomfort with the ostentation. You can drop me at the front, I told the driver. A row of luxury vehicles was already parked prominently. I immediately spotted Ethan's new Ferrari, positioned at an angle that ensured no one could miss it. Next to it was Uncle David's Bentley and my cousin Sophia's Range Rover. My Uber, a practical Toyota Camry, looked distinctly out of place. I thanked the driver, added a generous tip, and stepped out. From the corner of my eye, I caught Ethan watching my arrival, no doubt noting my transportation choice with smug satisfaction. The massive front door opened, revealing Javier, my parents' longtime butler. His formal demeanor softened into a genuine smile. Miss Clara, welcome home, he said warmly. Your parents are in the main salon. Thanks, Javier, I replied. How are Maria and the kids? Very well, thank you. Mateo started college this fall, first in the family. That is wonderful, I said, genuinely pleased. I had helped Javier's son with his application essays last year. Columbia, right? Computer science. Yes, he speaks of you often. Your encouragement meant everything. I squeezed his arm gently and moved into the soaring entry hall. The sounds of conversation and classical music drifted from the salon. My mother spotted me first. Catherine Donovan was a striking woman in her early 60s, elegant in a navy blue designer dress. She glided toward me, air-kissing both my cheeks. Clara, darling, she said, assessing my outfit with a quick glance. You could have worn the Chanel dress I sent you for your birthday. This is more comfortable, Mom, I said, giving her a real hug. You look beautiful as always. She sighed but smiled. Well, at least that blouse is silk. Come say hello to everyone. Your cousin Ethan just closed a major account at the firm. Of course he had. Ethan's achievements were always highlighted immediately. I followed my mother into the salon, a grand room with soaring ceilings and valuable artwork. My father, Michael Donovan, was talking with Uncle David near the fireplace. He was tall and distinguished, his once dark hair now mostly gray. Unlike my mother, my father maintained a certain restraint, as though he had not quite forgotten his middle-class origins. "There is my girl," he said, breaking away to embrace me properly. "How was the drive up?" "Fine, Dad. No traffic." He nodded, studying my face. "You look tired, working too hard." "Probably," I admitted. "But things are going well?" He lowered his voice. "Your latest quarterly filing was impressive. That contract with Johnson and Williams was quite a coup." I blinked in surprise. "You saw that?" He smiled slightly. "I keep tabs on you even if you think I do not." He squeezed my shoulder. "I am proud of you, Clara. Building something on your own terms." Before I could respond, Uncle David approached. "Clara, there you are. We were beginning to think you had forgotten about us successful folks." His laugh was a little too loud. "Hello, Uncle David. How are things at Westfield Financial?" "Booming. Absolutely booming. We just acquired a boutique firm in Boston, added $2 billion to our portfolio. But enough about me. How is your little startup doing? Still afloat?" My father frowned at his brother's condescending tone, but I just smiled. "We are managing. Thanks for asking." "Good, good. Persistence is important," he said, patting my arm. "Ethan is around here somewhere. He was made junior partner last month, youngest in the firm's history." As if summoned, Ethan appeared at his father's side. He was 32, conventionally handsome, in a bespoke suit and an ostentatiously diamond-encrusted watch. "Cousin Clara," he said. "Love the simple look. Very authentic." "Ethan," I responded with a nod. "Congratulations on making junior partner." He straightened his tie. "Thanks. The Ferrari outside is my celebration present to myself. 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds. "Impressive," I said, though I couldn't have cared less. A staff member announced that dinner was served. As we moved toward the formal dining room, my father fell into step beside me. "You are quiet tonight," he observed. "Just tired," I replied. "End of quarter is always busy." He nodded, then added quietly, "I read about your housing initiative in the Times business section, providing your platform to affordable housing advocates pro bono. That was good of you." I looked at him in surprise. It seemed like the right thing to do. Something like approval flickered in his eyes. "Your grandfather would have done the same. He never forgot where he came from." The first course arrived, seared scallops. The family dinner performance began. Aunt Helen said, "Isabella, that necklace is stunning." Isabella touched the diamond pendant. "Oh, this?" "Yes, James surprised me after he closed the Peterson merger. 12-carat cushion cut." "Speaking of mergers, David," my mother said, "I heard Westfield is looking at that firm in Chicago." Uncle David dabbed his mouth with his napkin. "Yes, negotiations are in the final stages. Ethan has been instrumental in the due diligence process." "Blake has always had a good head for business," Uncle David continued. "He gets that from me, of course." My father raised an eyebrow but said nothing. The conversation continued in this vein. I ate quietly, responding to direct questions, but otherwise remaining on the periphery. Ethan, however, seemed determined to draw me in. "So, Clara," he said, swirling his Bordeaux, "how is the entrepreneurial life treating you? Still working out of that co-working space downtown?" "We actually moved to our own offices last year," I replied, "in the Flatiron district." "Oh, must be expensive. And how many employees do you have now? Still just you and those 2 programmers?" "We have grown a bit." Ethan exchanged a knowing look with his father. "Well, Startups are always a gamble. 90% തേറൽ. The fact that you have lasted this long is actually quite impressive. Thank you for the vote of confidence, I said dryly. Aunt Helen leaned forward, her expression one of practiced concern. Darling, you know, if you ever need help, the family is here for you. I am sure your father could find a suitable position for you at Donovan Development. That is very kind, Aunt Helen. But we are doing fine. Of course, dear, she said, patting my hand in a way that suggested she did not believe me. I just worry. A young woman should be thinking about stability. Entrepreneurship is all well and good, Uncle Robert chimed in, but there is something to be said for the security of an established firm. I remember when you first announced you were starting your own company, Ethan said as the main course was served. What was it again? Some kind of data analysis for small businesses? That is right, I confirmed. My cousin Sophia approached next, embracing me with excessive enthusiasm. Clara, oh my God, it has been forever. I love what you have done with your hair. So natural. Sophia worked nominally in public relations. Just back from Capri, she said. Marco has a villa there, 6 bedrooms, infinity pool, private beach access. We're thinking of buying our own place nearby, just a little €3 million hideaway. I nodded politely as she continued. Over her shoulder, I could see my other cousins engaged in similar conversations. Justin was showing off his new Rolex to his sister Isabella, who was scrolling through photos of her Maldives vacation. The entire room hummed with a familiar symphony of competitive wealth. I stood in the midst of it, Arthur's watch on my wrist, thinking about a conference call I had scheduled with a non-profit to connect homeless individuals with employment opportunities. The contrast between these worlds was jarring. Seems like a limited market, he observed. Small businesses do not usually have much budget for that sort of thing. We have a mixed client base, I said simply. I just wonder about the viability long term, Ethan pressed on. Venture capital has dried up considerably. I thought about the $20 million in funding we had secured last quarter. We manage. My father cleared his throat. Clara's company is doing quite well, actually. I have been impressed with their growth metrics. Ethan looked surprised, then quickly recovered. Well, good for her. It is important to follow your passion, even if it means certain lifestyle adjustments. Yes, Isabella added. I admire your commitment to simplicity, Clara. It must be so grounding to live like regular people. I caught my father watching me. There is dignity in living within one's means, I replied evenly, something Arthur always emphasized. My revelry was interrupted by my cousin Sophia describing her new Mercedes. The interior is completely customized, she said. When you are driving through the Hamptons, it is worth it to make the right impression. Ethan nodded. Image is everything. The right car, the right address, the right connections. It all signals your place in the hierarchy. He turned to me with a smile that did not reach his eyes. Speaking of which, Clara, I noticed you arrived by Uber today. Still taking the bus around the city too? The table fell silent. I saw my mother's embarrassed expression, my aunt's poorly concealed pity, and my uncle's smug satisfaction. But it was my father's reaction that surprised me. His attention had shifted from Ethan's face to my wrist, where Arthur's watch was partially visible. His eyes widened slightly, his fork pausing halfway to his mouth. He was staring at the watch with an expression of stunned recognition. Ethan, misinterpreting my father's reaction, pressed his advantage. I mean, there is frugality, and then there is unnecessary suffering. I opened my mouth to respond, but at that moment, my father found his voice. Is that what I think it is? He asked, his voice cutting through Ethan's commentary. He was still staring at my wrist. What do you mean? Your watch, he said, setting down his fork deliberately. May I see it? The table had gone silent. I hesitated, then extended my arm across the table. My father leaned forward, examining the timepiece with growing amazement. This is an Arthur Vance original, he said quietly. From his limited first collection. The tech entrepreneur who died last year? Uncle David frowned. He made watches? Before he entered the tech world, my father explained, he was a horologist first, created a small collection of handcrafted timepieces. Only 50 were ever made. He looked up at me, his expression a mix of shock and newfound respect. How did you come to possess this? All eyes were now on me. Arthur gave it to me, I said simply. Before he died, he was my mentor and an early investor in my company. My father sat back in his chair. Do you have any idea what this is worth? I nodded. I know it is valuable, but that is not why I wear it. That, my father said, addressing the entire table now, is a $2 million watch, possibly more, given its provenance and the fact that Vance's death has made his collection even more sought after. A collective gasp went around the table. Ethan's mouth literally fell open. Isabella dropped her fork. Oh, this old thing, I said with a casual shrug, pulling my sleeve back slightly. I wear it every day. Arthur insisted that beautiful things should be used, not stored away. My father was shaking his head in amazement. The craftsmanship is extraordinary. Each one was entirely handmade by Vance himself. Uncle David was staring at the watch with new interest. $2 million on your wrist. You should have that insured, Clara. It is, I assured him. Arthur took care of that when he gave it to me. He said it was the first thing he ever created that truly mattered to him. Ethan had recovered, his tone completely transformed. I had no idea you were close to Arthur Vance. He was a legend. He was more than that, I said quietly. He was a friend. He believed in what I was building when few others did. Which was what exactly? Uncle David asked, his earlier divisiveness replaced by genuine curiosity. I took a sip of water. We developed a proprietary algorithm that helps businesses optimize their operations through predictive analytics. We started with small businesses, but we have expanded significantly. We now work with several Fortune 500 companies, 3 major healthcare systems, and the federal government. My mother blinked in surprise. The federal government? You never mentioned that. The contract was finalized last month. It is our largest deal to date. How large? Ethan asked, unable to contain himself. I met his gaze directly. $900 million over 5 years. Another stunned silence fell over the table. My father was looking at me with open pride. My mother appeared completely bewildered. But you still live in that tiny apartment in the city? She said. And you take the bus? I smiled. I like my apartment. It is close to our offices. As for public transportation, it is efficient and better for the environment. Arthur took the bus every day of his life, even after he became a billionaire. A true Vance disciple, my father murmured, looking at me with new understanding. Ethan was struggling to reconcile this new information. So your company, it is successful then? I nodded. Very. We are currently valued at $1.8 billion after our last funding round. I maintain majority ownership. Arthur? Uncle David asked. Arthur Vance, I explained. He was my mentor. He passed away last year. Oh, the tech guy, Ethan said dismissively. Made a fortune in software or something, right? Lived like a pauper despite being worth billions. Kind of eccentric. I felt a surge of anger. He believed that wealth should be measured by impact, not possessions. Ethan snorted. Easy to say when you have billions. I bet he still flew private. Actually, he flew commercial and owned one modest home in Palo Alto. He put most of his money into his foundation for educational access. Well, to each their own, Ethan said with a shrug. But there is nothing wrong with enjoying the fruits of your labor. What is the point of success if you cannot show it off a little? As conversation shifted, I felt the weight of Arthur's watch on my wrist, a reminder of what truly mattered.
Uncle David choked on his drink. Aunt Helen's eyes widened to an almost comical degree. Isabella was furiously typing something into her phone. "You are a billionaire?" Ethan asked incredulously. "On paper, potentially," I clarified. "Most of my net worth is tied to the company's valuation. I take a reasonable salary and live accordingly." "But why keep it a secret?" Sophia asked, genuinely perplexed. "Because true success is not measured by what others think of you, but by the impact you create and the problems you solve," I said, thinking of Arthur. "Our platform has helped thousands of small businesses survive. It has optimized healthcare delivery in undeserved communities. That matters more than the valuation." My father was nodding slowly. Vance's philosophy. Focus on the work, not the rewards. I always admired that about him. Ethan seemed unable to process this. His entire worldview had been upended. "But the clothes you wear, the way you live." "Our choices," I finished for him. "Just as your choices reflect your values." Arthur taught me that we reveal our true selves not through what we say, but through what we prioritize. The dinner continued, but the dynamic had fundamentally changed. Family members who had barely acknowledged me earlier were now finding reasons to engage me in conversation. As the dessert course was being served, Ethan leaned toward me, his voice low. "I owe you an apology, Clara. I have been condescending and rude. I assumed that because you did not flaunt your success, you had none to flaunt." I studied him for a moment. "Success means different things to different people, Ethan. I do not judge your choices. I would appreciate the same courtesy." He nodded, looking somewhat chastened. "The watch really is extraordinary. Vance must have thought very highly of you." I touched the timepiece gently. "It reminds me every day of what matters. Not its value, but what it represents. Craftsmanship, integrity, creating something meaningful that lasts." As I said these words, I caught my father watching me from across the table. For perhaps the first time, he was seeing me not as his little girl, but as a woman who had forged her own path. In that moment of recognition, I felt something shift between us, a new foundation of mutual respect taking shape. As coffee was served, the conversation inevitably circled back to my watch. Uncle David finally voiced what many were thinking. "I still cannot wrap my head around the fact that Arthur Vance was your mentor. He was notoriously selective." "How exactly did that relationship develop?" "I met Arthur at Future Forward Tech, the startup where I worked after graduation," I began. "He was brought in as an advisor during a difficult quarter." "I remember that company," Ethan interjected. "They were acquired by Google eventually, right?" I nodded. "For $300 million, but at the time we were on the verge of collapse. Arthur came in and completely transformed our approach." "He had this ability to cut through complexity," my father agreed. "Remarkable clarity of thought. He noticed that I asked different questions than everyone else," I continued. "After one contentious meeting, he asked me to walk with him to get coffee. We ended up talking for 3 hours. By the end of that conversation, he had offered to mentor me." "Just like that?" Uncle David asked skeptically. "Arthur made decisions quickly when he saw potential. He told me later that he recognized something in me that reminded him of himself at my age. My mother spoke up. And he invested in your company when you started it." "He was my first investor," I confirmed. $500,000 on a handshake. No formal pitch. He said he was investing in me, not just the idea. "That is not how business typically works," Uncle David pointed out. I smiled. Arthur was not typical. He believed the best innovations come from trust and freedom. His only conditions were that I maintain control of the company and that I use a portion of any profits to help others. "The foundation you established last year," my father said, nodding with understanding. "The one focused on tech education in undeserved communities. That was part of your agreement with Vance." "Yes," I acknowledged, surprised that he knew about it, though I would have done it anyway. Arthur showed me that success creates responsibility.
Isabella, who had been researching on her phone, looked up with wide eyes. According to Forbes, Vance Dynamics is projected to reach $3 billion in valuation by next quarter. There are rumors of an IPO. She stared at me. You named your company after him. It seemed appropriate. His philosophy is the foundation of everything we do. But why keep all of this so private? Aunt Helen asked. You could be living in a penthouse, driving luxury cars. When Arthur gave me this watch, I said, he told me something I will never forget. He said, the moment you feel the need to prove your worth to others is the moment you have forgotten what you are truly worth. I do not need to display my success to validate it. My father nodded slowly, a new appreciation in his eyes. Vance always understood that true power lies in knowing your value without needing external validation. The most valuable lessons he taught me had nothing to do with business strategy. They were about integrity, purpose, and the responsibility that comes with success. Ethan finally spoke up. So, the watch. It must have incredible sentimental value beyond its price. It is priceless to me, I confirmed. Arthur wore it while building $3 billion companies. He said it kept him grounded, reminded him of the craftsmanship and patience required to create something of lasting value. And now you wear it while building your own empire, my father observed with a small smile. I shook my head. Not an empire, a solution. Our platform helps businesses operate more efficiently, which saves jobs, reduces waste, and improves working conditions. The valuation is just a byproduct, not the goal. The federal contract you mentioned, he said, that was the one announced last month to modernize agency operations. Yes, I confirmed. We beat out several major tech firms. Our solution will save taxpayers an estimated $12 billion over 10 years. That was your company? Uncle David exclaimed. It was all over the financial news. They never mentioned you by name. I prefer to keep a low profile, I explained. Our work speaks for itself. But surely now, Aunt Helen pressed, you will upgrade your lifestyle? A nicer apartment at least? I smiled politely. I like where I live. It is convenient. Arthur lived in the same modest house for 30 years. He taught me that excess consumption rarely correlates with increased happiness. So you just work all the time? Isabella asked, her tone suggesting she found the concept depressing. I work on things that matter to me, I clarified, but I also travel, volunteer, and spend time with friends who value me for who I am, not what I own. My life is very full. And the foundation? My father asked. Tell us more about that. I felt a genuine smile spread across my face. The Vance Foundation for Technological Equity. We provide comprehensive tech education and mentorship to students from under-resourced communities, full scholarships, equipment, internships, and ongoing support. Our first cohort of 50 students is halfway through the program. They are extraordinary. 50 students, Uncle David said. That seems modest for someone of your means. We are just getting started, I explained. The program is intensive. We want to refine our approach before expanding, but our 10-year plan is to reach 10,000 students annually. 10,000 lives changed, my father mused. That is a significant legacy, more significant than any possession could be. As coffee concluded, I noticed a distinct change in how people were interacting with me. There was a new deference in their manner, a recalibration of my position. It was exactly what I had always wanted to avoid, being valued for my bank account rather than my character. Ethan sidled up to me as we walked to the library. I feel like I need to completely reassess everything I thought I knew about you, he admitted. All this time, I was pitying you, thinking you could not afford the lifestyle the rest of us enjoy, and it turns out you could buy and sell most of us several times over. I stopped and turned to face him. That is exactly why I do not discuss my company's valuation, Ethan. I do not want to be treated differently based on my net worth. It is the least interesting thing about me. He looked genuinely perplexed. But is not that what we all want? Recognition of our success? I get all the recognition I need from seeing our platform make a difference, I told him. From watching our foundation students thrive. From knowing that Arthur would be proud of what I have built. Ethan glanced down at my watch, then back at my face. I think I have a lot to learn from you, Clara. For the first time that evening, his words seemed completely sincere. In the library, I was now being included in discussions that would have previously excluded me. Uncle David was suddenly interested in my thoughts on market trends. Aunt Helen wanted to introduce me to her friend who ran a charitable foundation. I accepted a glass of whiskey and found a quiet corner. The revelation of my success had altered the family dynamic in ways that both amused and troubled me. I was the same person, yet I was now being treated entirely differently. Quite a performance, my father said, appearing beside me. Mind if I join you? Please do. He settled in. You know, I always respected your desire for privacy, but I had no idea you were keeping quite this much under wraps. Would it have made a difference if you had known? I asked. He considered this. I have always been proud of you, Clara, but I might have run interference with the rest of the family a bit more effectively. I can handle condescension, I assured him. It is the sudden shift in treatment now that they know about the company valuation that bothers me more. My father nodded. The curse of wealth. People see the money, not the person. It is why I have always been suspicious of new friends who appear after business deals are announced. Arthur had the same problem, I said. He told me once that he could count on one hand the number of people who truly knew him, not his net worth. He sounds like a remarkable mentor. I wish I had taken the time to know him better. You would have liked him, I said. He was brilliant but unpretentious. Completely authentic, my father observed with a small smile. Like his protege. You know, watching you tonight, I saw so much of myself at your age. The determination to build something meaningful, to be judged on merit rather than background. This surprised me. Really. But you embrace all of this. I gestured around at the opulent room. He chuckled. Your mother embraces it. I tolerate it because it makes her happy. Between us, I would be perfectly content in a place a quarter this size. I had no idea, I admitted. We have that in common, it seems. The ability to keep our true selves somewhat hidden. Though perhaps we have both been too good at it. I should have seen what you were building, should have recognized your achievements sooner. You saw enough, I assured him. You checked those quarterly filings, apparently. He smiled. Professional curiosity at first, then genuine admiration, but I respected your privacy. I appreciated that, I said honestly. It meant everything to build this on my own terms. My father's expression grew serious. The watch? It really was Vance's personal timepiece? I nodded, extending my wrist. He gave it to me on my 28th birthday, said it had been with him through everything, and now it should be with me. My father studied it with expert eyes. The craftsmanship is extraordinary. He made this one himself from scratch, spent 2 years perfecting the movement while launching his first tech company. He said it taught him patience and precision. Clearly, my father looked from the watch to me, and now they serve you. Our conversation was interrupted as Ethan approached, his demeanor noticeably humbler. Excuse me, Uncle Michael, could I borrow Clara for a moment? My father nodded and stood. Of course, I should check on your mother anyway. Ethan took the vacated seat. I wanted to apologize properly, Clara. My behavior tonight and frankly, at every family gathering for years, has been inexcusable. Apology accepted, I said. But I am curious, what exactly are you apologizing for? He looked taken aback. For treating you like you were less successful, less accomplished than me. And if my company was worth $10,000 instead of nearly $2 billion, would you still be apologizing? I asked mildly. Ethan had the grace to look embarrassed. That is a fair question. It is the only question that matters, I pointed out. Because if you are only sorry because you discovered I am wealthier than you imagined, then you have missed the entire point. He was quiet for a moment. You are right, he finally admitted. I have been measuring success, measuring people, by all the wrong metrics. It is how I was raised, but that is no excuse. It is never too late to reevaluate your values, I told him, my tone softening. I would like to hear more about him sometime, Ethan said, about his philosophy, if you would be willing to share. I would like that, I said, somewhat surprised by his genuine interest. As Ethan excused himself, my mother approached. Clara, darling, I feel absolutely terrible about all the little comments I have made over the years about your apartment, your clothes. Mom, I interrupted gently, that is exactly why I did not tell you. I wanted you to accept my choices for what they were, not because they came with a certain valuation. She looked confused. But surely you understand that we only want what is best for you. This is what I want, I assured her. A meaningful business that solves real problems. A foundation that creates opportunities for deserving students. A life focused on purpose rather than possessions. But you could have both, she insisted. Purpose and beautiful things. I touched Arthur's watch. I have both. This is the most beautiful thing I own, and I cherish it, not for its market value, but for what it represents. As the evening wound down, I found myself engaged in more genuine conversations than ever before. Some relatives were still processing the revelation, but a few, like my father, were connecting with me on a deeper level. When it came time to leave, I ordered another Uber. My father walked me to the door. You have given them all something to think about tonight, he observed, myself included. That was never my intention, I said. I just wanted to be treated like a person, not a bank account. He nodded thoughtfully. Arthur Vance's greatest legacy may not be his companies or even his watches, but what he taught you about the true meaning of success. He placed a hand on my shoulder. I would like to see your office sometime, meet your team. I would like that, I said, genuinely pleased. How about next week? It is a date, he agreed as my Uber pulled up. And Clara, keep wearing that watch. It is exactly where it belongs. As I settled into the car, I glanced down at Arthur's timepiece. To most of my family, the watch had transformed me from a struggling entrepreneur to a serious player. But to me, it remained what it had always been, a connection to a mentor who had shown me that the truest measure of success was not what you accumulated, but what you contributed. 3 weeks after the dinner, I sat in my office overlooking Madison Avenue. The visit from my father had gone better than I could have hoped. He had met my team and asked thoughtful questions. You have built something remarkable here, he had told me. Not just the technology or the business, but the culture. Now, as I reviewed plans for our foundation's new headquarters, I reflected on how much had changed. My father and I spoke several times a week now. My mother had finally accepted my lifestyle choices. Most surprising was the evolution in my relationship with Ethan. He had reached out to learn more about Arthur's philosophy and had even begun volunteering with a local youth coding program. The larger family dynamic had shifted as well. At a cousin's birthday celebration, I had noticed less emphasis on material acquisitions and more substantial conversations. My assistant knocked lightly. Your 2 o'clock is here, the high school student you mentioned. Send her in, I said, standing to greet my visitor. Maya entered nervously, a 16-year-old with bright eyes. She had applied to our foundation's mentorship program with an impressive proposal for using data analytics to address food insecurity. Miss Donovan, she said, extending her hand. Clara, please, I corrected gently. I was impressed by your application, Maya. Your approach was innovative. She brightened. My family relies on food assistance programs, so I know firsthand how challenging access can be. I want to create solutions. As she outlined her ideas, I was struck by her passion. This was exactly the kind of student Arthur had wanted to support. How would you feel about being the first participant in our new direct mentorship program? I asked. You would work directly with our data science team. There is a stipend involved, of course. Her eyes widened. Are you serious? That would change everything for me. Completely serious, I assured her. Your idea has real potential. As we discussed the details, I was conscious of Arthur's watch on my wrist, a tangible reminder of the responsibility that came with success. After Maya left, I called my father to tell him about the new initiative. He listened, then surprised me. I would like to contribute to the foundation, he said, not just financially, but with time. I have experience that might be valuable. That would be wonderful, I told him, genuinely moved. And I suspect I would benefit from their fresh perspectives, he replied. Your dinner revelation did more than just surprise the family, Clara. It made me reevaluate how I measure success. As we finalized plans for his involvement, I thought about how one evening had created ripples that continued to expand. Later that evening, as I rode the subway home, I studied the diverse faces of my fellow passengers. Arthur had moved through the world this way, seeing people rather than positions, value rather than valuables. In my apartment, I took off the watch and held it in my palm. It was a compass, guiding my decisions, a reminder that true wealth lay not in what you possessed, but in what you contributed. The watch would continue to accompany me through board meetings and family dinners, a witness to the creation of something meaningful. As I prepared for bed, my phone chimed with a message from Ethan. He had just finished his first solo teaching session at the coding program. I think I finally understand what Arthur meant about impact over image, he wrote. Thank you for showing me a different way to measure success. I smiled as I replied, thinking about how authentic connections and genuine purpose were the true markers of a life well lived. The watch had caught my father's eye at that fateful dinner. But what truly mattered was the philosophy it represented, the understanding that our worth is not determined by our wealth, but by our actions and their impact on others. Have you ever had a moment when something you owned revealed more about you than you intended? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this journey of authentic success resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe. Remember that the most precious things we own are not measured by their price tags, but by the meaning they hold in our hearts. Thank you for listening.